The morning fog rolled across the Colorado mountains as Tom Wilson checked his compass one last time. He had been hiking alone for 3 days, carrying everything he needed in his worn backpack. 25 years in the army had taught him how to survive anywhere, and these peaceful woods felt like home to him. Something was wrong though. Tom stopped walking and listened carefully. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, not even the buzz of flies. In all his years of outdoor training, Tom had learned that when nature goes silent, danger is close. He crouched behind a large fallen tree and slowly looked around. His hand moved to the knife on his belt without thinking. Old habits from his military days never really went away. Tom had survived in deserts, jungles, and frozen mountains. He knew how to stay alive when things got bad. A low humming sound came from above the trees. Tom looked up and saw something that made him blink twice to make sure he was seeing correctly. A large silver object, about the size of a school bus, floated silently over the clearing where he had planned to set up camp. It did not look like any airplane or helicopter he had ever seen. The craft had no wings, no rotors, nothing that should have kept it in the air. Its surface was perfectly smooth and reflected the morning sunlight like a mirror. Tom had seen many strange aircraft during his military service, but this was different. This was not made by humans. He started to back away slowly, staying low behind the fallen tree. His survival training told him to get away from unknown threats, find cover, and observe from a safe distance. But before he could move far, a pale blue light shot down from the craft and surrounded him. Tom felt his muscles stop working. He could still think clearly, but his body would not obey his commands. The blue light lifted him off the ground, and he floated upward toward the strange craft. As a soldier, Tom had been captured before and knew what was happening. Someone was taking him prisoner, but these captors were far more advanced than any enemy he had faced. His last thought before everything went dark was that the light seemed designed to shut down the human nervous system in a very precise way. These were not random attackers. They knew exactly what they were doing. When Tom woke up, he found himself lying on a smooth white floor in a small room. The walls were the same clean white color and seemed to glow with their own light. There were no doors or windows that he could see, just 4 seamless walls, a ceiling, and a floor. The room was about as big as a prison cell, which Tom suspected was exactly what it was meant to be. Instead of panicking like most people would, Tom immediately started doing what his military training had taught him. First, check yourself for injuries. His body felt fine, maybe a little stiff, but nothing was broken or bleeding. Second, study your prison. The air felt fresh, so there was some kind of ventilation system. The temperature was comfortable, around 70 degrees. The gravity felt almost normal, maybe slightly lighter than Earth. Third, observe your captors. One wall of the room was transparent, like glass, but probably much stronger. Through it, Tom could see a corridor with the same white walls and soft lighting. As he watched, several figures walked past his cell. They were not human. Tom had seen many different people from around the world during his military service, but these beings were clearly from somewhere else. They were about the same height as humans but much thinner. Their skin was pale gray, and their heads were larger than human heads. Most striking were their eyes, which were completely black and much bigger than human eyes. The creatures wore tight-fitting suits that looked like they were made from some kind of advanced fabric. They moved smoothly and quietly down the corridor, paying no attention to Tom. Their movements seemed very precise, like everything they did was carefully planned. Tom sat down on what appeared to be a sleeping platform built into one wall and continued watching. More of the creatures passed by, some carrying devices that glowed and beeped softly. They seemed to communicate with each other using musical sounds that were nothing like human speech. One creature, slightly taller than the others and wearing a more decorated suit, stopped in front of Tom's cell. It studied him with those large black eyes, tilting its head like a bird examining something interesting. Tom stared back calmly, keeping his face neutral. In interrogation training, he had learned never to show fear or surprise to his captors. The tall creature made some musical sounds to the others, then touched a device on its suit. A series of symbols appeared on Tom's side of the transparent wall, probably some kind of writing. When Tom did not react to the symbols, the creature seemed puzzled. It made more sounds and touched its device again. This time, simple pictures appeared on the wall. Tom understood that they were trying to communicate with him, probably to study how humans think and behave. He had been captured by beings from another world, and they saw him as some kind of test subject. The creature watched his reactions carefully, clearly disappointed that he was not showing the fear and confusion they expected. After several minutes, the tall creature moved on, leaving Tom alone with his thoughts. He looked around his cell once more, this time not just observing but planning. His captors might be more advanced than humans, but Tom had survived impossible situations before. These aliens had made one big mistake when they chose him. They had picked a man who knew how to survive anything. Commander Rex of the spaceship Discovery stared at the screens showing the human prisoner with growing confusion. 5 days had passed since they captured Subject 312H, and nothing was going as expected. Their research on humans said the creatures should be crying, screaming, or trying to hurt themselves by now. Instead, this human seemed perfectly calm. "Sir," said his assistant, Officer Lin, pointing at her monitoring device. "The human is not acting like the others we studied before. He shows no fear responses. No stress behaviors. He just watches us and does strange physical movements every day." Rex looked at the screens again. The human was doing what appeared to be exercises, using his own body weight to stay strong. This was completely different from their previous human subjects, who had become weak and sick within days of capture. What worried Rex more was how the human studied them. Every time one of the crew members walked past the cell, the human watched carefully. His eyes followed their movements, clearly learning their patterns and habits. This was not the behavior of a simple, primitive creature. Tom continued his daily routine, unaware of how much he was confusing his alien captors. Each morning he did push-ups, sit-ups, and stretching exercises to keep his body strong. Then he spent hours studying everything he could see through the transparent wall of his cell. The aliens fascinated him, but not because they were strange-looking. What interested Tom was how they behaved. During his years in the military, he had learned to read people, to understand their strengths and weaknesses. These aliens had some very obvious weaknesses. First, they seemed completely dependent on their technology. Every decision they made required checking their glowing devices. They never seemed to do anything without consulting their computers first. Tom had served with soldiers like this, people who could not function without constant communication with headquarters. Second, they appeared to be physically weak. Their movements were careful and slow, like people who had never done hard physical work. Their thin arms and legs suggested they had never needed to lift heavy objects or run long distances. Third, and most interesting to Tom, they seemed to have trouble functioning when their environment changed even slightly. 2 days ago, there had been a brief power problem that dimmed the corridor lights for about 10 minutes. Tom had watched through his cell wall as the aliens stumbled around in the reduced lighting, clearly unable to see well or move confidently. Tom had spent those 10 minutes in complete darkness many times during night operations. Darkness did not frighten him. It was just another environment to adapt to. That night, Tom decided to test his theories about his captors. During his exploration of the cell, he had found that one section of the wall panel was slightly loose. Using careful pressure and patience, he had managed to work it free without making noise. Behind the panel was exactly what he had hoped to find: electronic systems that controlled his cell's environment. The technology was far more advanced than anything on Earth, but the basic principles were the same. Power flowed through circuits, data moved along pathways, and sensors monitored conditions. Tom had learned basic electronics during his military training. Every soldier needed to know how to repair and maintain their equipment in the field. Looking at the alien systems, he could identify power supplies, data connections, and what appeared to be environmental controls. Using a thin piece of metal he had carefully removed from the panel housing, Tom made a small adjustment to one of the sensors. Nothing dramatic, just enough to cause minor changes in his cell's lighting and temperature. If he was right about his captors, even small problems would cause them significant stress. The response was immediate and told him everything he needed to know. Within minutes, 3 aliens rushed to his cell area, moving faster than he had ever seen them move before. They carried scanning devices and spoke to each other in rapid, high-pitched sounds that clearly indicated panic. The aliens spent over an hour checking and rechecking their instruments, obviously distressed by the minor environmental fluctuation Tom had created. They treated the small malfunction like a major emergency, bringing more crew members and more equipment to investigate. Tom lay on his sleeping platform, pretending to rest while watching everything through half-closed eyes. The aliens' reaction confirmed his growing understanding of their fundamental weakness. They had become so dependent on their perfect, controlled environment that any disruption threw them into chaos. During his military career, Tom had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often those who looked the strongest but had never faced real adversity. These aliens had obviously not dealt with equipment failures, supply shortages, or situations where their technology could not solve their problems. Over the following days, Tom continued his observations. He watched the aliens' daily routines, noting how they always followed the same patterns. They checked the same systems at the same times, walked the same routes through the ship, and seemed incapable of improvising when something unexpected happened. He also noticed that different aliens had different ranks, shown by the complexity of their suits and the devices they carried. The tall one who had first studied him was clearly in command, while others like the smaller alien named Lin seemed to be assistants or specialists. Most importantly, Tom began to understand their schedule and predict when different areas of the ship would be busy or empty. Information was power, and Tom was gathering as much information as possible. His military instructors had always taught that every enemy, no matter how strong, had weaknesses that could be exploited. Tom was beginning to see exactly what those weaknesses were, and how he might use them when the time came to act. The impact came without warning during what Tom had figured out was the ship's nighttime period. The entire vessel shook violently, throwing him against the wall of his cell. Emergency lights immediately bathed everything in red, and alarm sounds echoed through the corridors. Tom quickly steadied himself and looked through the transparent wall. What he saw confirmed his worst fears about his captor's abilities. The aliens were running in panic, their usual calm movements replaced by frantic rushing back and forth. Their musical language had become high-pitched squealing sounds that clearly meant they were terrified. Commander Rex's voice came over the ship's communication system, speaking in their alien language. Even without understanding the words, Tom could hear the fear and stress in the commander's tone. Whatever had hit them was serious enough to damage the ship's main systems. Tom pressed his face to the cell wall and tried to assess the situation like he had been trained to do. The ship was still pressurized, so the hull had not been breached. The artificial gravity was working, which meant the main power core was intact. But the lighting was dim, the air circulation seemed weaker, and he could hear unusual sounds from the ship's machinery. Over the next few hours, Tom watched his captors struggle with their crisis. Groups of aliens hurried past his cell carrying devices that sparked and flickered. Many of their usual glowing screens were dark or showing flashing warning symbols. The crew seemed completely lost without their normal computer systems. What shocked Tom most was how helpless they appeared. During his military service, he had been through equipment failures, power outages, and emergency situations. Soldiers were trained to think clearly under pressure, to work together as a team, and to find solutions using whatever materials were available. These aliens did none of those things. They seemed unable to make decisions without consulting their computers, which were not working properly. Simple tasks like checking for damage or organizing repair teams appeared to overwhelm them completely. They had no backup procedures, no manual controls, and no experience solving problems by hand. By the second day after the collision, Tom could see the physical effects of stress on the alien crew. Their movements had become slower and more clumsy. Several aliens showed signs that Tom recognized from exhausted soldiers, stumbling when they walked and having trouble concentrating on simple tasks. The ship's life support systems were clearly failing. The air in Tom's cell had become stale and warm. The lighting flickered constantly, and sometimes went out completely for several minutes at a time. During these blackouts, Tom could hear the aliens making distressed sounds in the corridors, obviously unable to function in darkness. On the third day, Tom watched two aliens collapse from exhaustion right outside his cell. Officer Lin and another crew member simply fell to the floor and lay there, too weak to continue walking. Other aliens found them and tried to help, but they were clearly struggling themselves. Tom realized that his captors were slowly dying, not from the ship damage itself, but from their complete inability to adapt to the crisis. They had lived their entire lives in perfect, controlled conditions. When those conditions changed, they had no skills or experience to help them survive. Looking at Officer Lin lying unconscious on the floor, Tom made his decision. These aliens had kidnapped him and planned to use him for experiments, but he could not watch intelligent beings die from their own helplessness. His military training had taught him to help fellow soldiers in trouble, even enemies when the fighting was over. Tom returned to the loose wall panel he had discovered earlier and began working on the cell's electronic systems. The alien technology was complex, but desperation gave him focus and patience. After several hours of careful work, he found the magnetic locks that kept his cell door sealed. Using techniques he had learned for disarming explosive devices, Tom slowly bypassed the security systems. Each connection had to be perfect because one mistake might trigger alarms or lock the cell permanently. His hands remained steady despite the stress, years of military training keeping him calm under pressure. Finally, he heard the distinctive sound of magnetic locks releasing. The cell door slid open with a soft hiss, and for the first time in over a week, Tom stepped into the ship's corridor as a free man. He immediately knelt beside Officer Lin and checked her vital signs. Her pulse was weak but steady and her breathing was shallow. She was suffering from exhaustion and stress, conditions Tom had seen many times in overwhelmed soldiers. What she needed was rest, water, and someone to take charge of the situation. Tom looked down the corridor and saw more aliens in similar conditions. Some were sitting against the walls, too tired to continue working. Others wandered aimlessly, clearly lost without their computer systems to guide them. The ship was full of the most advanced beings he had ever encountered, and they were helpless because their machines had stopped working. Officer Lynn's large black eyes opened and focused on Tom with obvious fear. She tried to move away from him, but she was too weak to stand. Tom held up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there," Tom said in his calmest voice, the same tone he had used to reassure injured soldiers. "I'm not going to hurt you. Let's see what we can do to fix this mess." Even though she could not understand his words, something in Tom's voice and manner seemed to calm the alien officer. For the first time since the crisis began, she stopped looking panicked and started looking hopeful. Tom Wilson, former prisoner, was about to become the savior of his captors. Commander Rex stood in his command center, staring at the impossible sight before him. The human prisoner who had been in their cell just hours ago was now standing at the main control panel, his hands moving confidently across systems designed for alien fingers. Somehow, through hand signals, simple drawings, and endless patience, the human had made them understand that he wanted to help. The most shocking part was that his primitive solutions were actually working. Tom pointed to the ship's damaged display and made a questioning gesture with his hands. Officer Lin, who seemed to learn faster than the other aliens, touched the screen to show him the areas where the asteroid impact had broken power lines and damaged the air cleaning systems. Tom studied the layout carefully, just like he used to study maps during military planning sessions. He could see that the aliens were thinking about the problems in the wrong way. Instead of trying to fix everything back to perfect condition, they needed to find ways to keep the ship running with whatever still worked. Using hand signals and rough drawings on a portable screen, Tom showed them his plan. Rather than waiting for replacement parts that might never come, they could redirect power through backup systems and use manual controls to keep everyone alive. The idea of manual controls seemed completely foreign to the aliens. They had lived their entire lives trusting computers to handle everything. The concept that people could operate machinery by hand, without computer assistance, appeared to amaze and frighten them. Tom started with the basics. He showed Commander Rex how to read simple gauges that displayed pressure and temperature. These were skills so fundamental to human engineering that Tom had never imagined a space-traveling species could function without them. "Look, you have to understand something," Tom explained to Officer Lin, speaking slowly and using gestures to help communicate his meaning. "Your computers are tools to help you, not replacements for thinking. When they break, you need to be able to work without them." Working day and night, Tom guided teams of aliens through repairs that required creative thinking and physical problem-solving. He showed them how to make temporary fixes using materials from parts of the ship that were not essential. He taught them to calculate pressure differences using simple math instead of computers, and how to work together as coordinated teams when their usual communication networks were down. The breakthrough came when Tom successfully restored partial power to the ship's communications system. The message they received from the alien rescue fleet brought both good and bad news. Help was coming, but it would take at least 2 more weeks to reach them, and the rescue ships were not equipped to provide life support for a damaged vessel. But by then Tom realized it no longer mattered. Under his guidance, the ship had been transformed from a failing automated vessel into a functioning spacecraft operated by aliens who were learning the value of hands-on skills and creative problem-solving. The change in the crew was remarkable to watch. Aliens who had been helpless and panicked just days earlier were now working confidently with manual tools and backup systems. They had learned to trust their own judgment instead of always consulting computers first. Officer Lin became particularly skilled at the new manual procedures. Tom watched her teach other crew members how to check equipment by hand, how to listen to machinery to detect problems, and how to make quick decisions under pressure. She was becoming a natural leader, something that had been hidden under their old computer-dependent system. Commander Rex also showed impressive adaptation. The alien leader had initially been resistant to Tom's methods, clearly uncomfortable with abandoning their technological approaches. But as he saw the positive results, Rex began to embrace the manual techniques with enthusiasm. During one particularly challenging repair, Tom and Rex worked side by side to reroute power through a damaged section of the ship. The alien commander watched carefully as Tom used basic tools to splice electrical connections, something their advanced civilization had apparently forgotten how to do. "Your people," Rex said through their translation device, speaking slowly to make sure Tom understood, possess knowledge that we have lost. We became so focused on creating better machines that we forgot how to function when the machines fail. Tom nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead after completing a difficult repair. Every tool can break. Every system can fail. The most important skill is being able to adapt and keep going when that happens. The alien crew had not only learned to operate their ship manually, but they had also discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. Working with their hands, solving problems through trial and error, and trusting their own judgment had revealed hidden strengths in their character. As Tom looked around the command center, he saw aliens confidently monitoring systems using analog gauges, making repairs with basic tools, and communicating effectively even when their advanced communication networks were offline. They had been transformed from a helpless crew dependent on automation into capable individuals who could handle unexpected challenges. Commander Rex approached Tom with something that looked like respect in his large black eyes. "Tom Wilson," he said, carefully pronouncing the human name, "you have given us more than just technical knowledge. You have shown us how to be strong when our technology is weak." Tom smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction that reminded him of successfully training new soldiers. These aliens had been excellent students, and they had learned lessons that would serve them well beyond this crisis. The rescue fleet would arrive to find not a damaged ship with a desperate crew, but a vessel operated by aliens who had discovered the power of human adaptability and practical problem-solving skills. The alien rescue fleet arrived to find something completely unexpected. Instead of a damaged ship barely surviving in space, they discovered the Discovery operating smoothly with a crew that seemed more confident and capable than ever before. Commander Rex met the rescue team with a detailed report that would change everything his people thought they knew about humans. Tom stood beside the alien command crew as Rex addressed Fleet Admiral Kane, the senior officer leading the rescue mission. Through the translation devices, Tom listened as Rex explained how human survival skills and practical thinking had not only saved the ship but had actually improved how it functioned. "Admiral," Rex concluded, his voice carrying new strength and confidence, "I must officially recommend that we completely change how we classify humans. Their ability to adapt and solve problems represents skills that our civilization has forgotten during our technological advancement." Admiral Kane studied Tom with obvious interest. The human maintained a calm, professional attitude despite being the center of attention from an entire alien fleet. The Admiral had expected to find a primitive test subject, but instead found someone who had earned the genuine respect of an experienced crew. Tom stepped forward, addressing both Rex and Admiral Kane. He had learned enough of their language during the crisis to communicate basic ideas, while the translation system handled the more complex concepts. "Commander Rex," Tom began, "your people are remarkably intelligent and your technology is incredible. But you made the mistake of thinking that progress means replacing basic skills instead of building upon them." The translation system conveyed his words accurately, and Tom continued with growing confidence. "I propose we establish an exchange program. Your people could learn practical survival and engineering skills from humans, while we could benefit from your scientific knowledge. But first, you need to release all the humans you have captured and establish proper diplomatic contact with Earth." The negotiations that followed lasted several days. Tom found himself working as an unofficial ambassador, helping both species understand each other better. His practical approach and proven competence had earned him respect from aliens who had previously seen humans as inferior creatures. During the discussions, Tom learned disturbing information about the extent of alien abductions. Hundreds of humans had been taken over the years for scientific study, most of them ordinary people who had no survival training. These people were still being held on various research vessels and facilities throughout the alien territory. "Every single human must be returned safely to Earth," Tom insisted during one particularly difficult negotiation session. "No exceptions. These are not laboratory animals. They are intelligent beings with families and lives waiting for them." Admiral Kane initially resisted, arguing that releasing so many humans would compromise their research programs and potentially expose their presence to Earth's governments. But Rex supported Tom's demands, explaining how underestimating human capabilities had nearly cost his entire crew their lives. The breakthrough came when Tom offered a practical demonstration. Using only basic materials available on the alien ship, he showed the rescue fleet commanders how to perform emergency repairs that their automated systems could not handle. The aliens watched in amazement as Tom fabricated replacement parts using simple tools and creative problem-solving. "This is exactly what I mean," Tom explained as he completed a complex electrical repair using materials that the aliens had considered worthless junk. "Your people have incredible technology, but you have forgotten how to improvise and adapt. These skills could save lives when your machines fail in unknown environments. Fleet Admiral Kane was particularly impressed when Tom demonstrated how to navigate using only the stars visible through the ship's windows. The concept that someone could find their way through space without computer assistance seemed almost magical to the aliens. After 3 days of negotiations, Admiral Kane made an unprecedented decision. "Tom Wilson," he said, using the human's full name with careful pronunciation, "the High Council has authorized me to offer you a position as Chief Survival Consultant for our deep space exploration program. Your knowledge could prevent disasters and save countless lives throughout our fleet." Tom considered the offer carefully, looking out at the stars through the command center's large viewing windows. The opportunity to work with an advanced alien civilization was tempting, but he had conditions that were not negotiable. "I will accept your offer," Tom replied, "but only under specific terms. First, every human currently held by your people must be returned to Earth immediately and safely. Second, we establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth's governments instead of secret abductions. Third, any future cooperation must be voluntary, with full informed consent from all participants." Admiral Kane and Commander Rex exchanged what Tom had learned to recognize as expressions of agreement among their species. The terms were acceptable, especially given what they had learned about human capabilities during the crisis. As preparation began for Tom's journey to the alien homeworld, he reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. The aliens had intended to capture a random human specimen for their research. Instead, they had accidentally chosen the one person best equipped not only to survive their captivity but to teach them valuable lessons about adaptability and survival. The final irony was that Tom's military training, which had been designed to help him fight enemies, had instead helped him save his former captors and forge an alliance between two species. Standing in the observation deck of the alien flagship, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance, Tom smiled at the thought that his greatest mission was just beginning. He was no longer a prisoner or even a survivor. He was humanity's first ambassador to the stars, carrying with him the knowledge that sometimes the most advanced civilizations needed to learn the most basic lessons about what it truly meant to be strong.